Hi, thanks for joining me today. So, in my walkthrough, I mentioned that I was going to show you how I made this two-in-one mini album, and I'm using the Tonic Studios Keepsake Insert Book of Special Memories die set. And the die does really all the work for you. So I'm gonna put the actual construction on fast forward and I'll talk you through what I'm doing. So diving right in, here's essentially the basic of structure of most of my pages. This is a very simple album. I just wanted to sort of test out the die set and play around with it a little bit. So I'm going to do a very simple gatefold, and what I've done is I've just taken the half page that the die cuts out, and instead of die cutting the full die, I just cut it off. And now I'm scoring. There's just to the one side of that dotted line where the two curves meet. So I'm gonna score and fold right there, and that's where my gate is going to be hinged. And so it gives me a nice curve that matches up with the curve of the half page. I'd like to use score tape here because it's a very strong tape. So for anything that is interactive or is part of the basic structure of my albums, I like to use the strongest tape that I have, and generally that's going to be score tape. I used to use redline tape, which is really strong as well, but I've heard that redline can sometimes peel up in hot or humid weather. Now, there is going to be a portion of the base page that will be shown outside the gate. So I've just got this scrap piece of pattern paper, and so that's what I'll use to apply to my base page. And then I've already got the decorative paper for the outside of my gate. I really love this wood paneling. So that's how I'm gonna have it. And for that, when the gate opens, I've got that lovely ivy, and I am using the same die for everything. I'm just doing a lot of partial die cutting to get sort of the bits and pieces of what I need. There is a die to cut a matting layer for your base page, but I wanted to cover the base page entirely because I felt like that was the look I was going for, instead of leaving that a border around the page. So this ivory panel is going to be the panel once the gate is opened, and so I just really need to cut right where the straight line is, because my gatefold is going to be there. So you can see the piece of pattern paper that I cut out is just about the width of what I need, barely, not much more. I try to be really conservative with my paper and just, cut what I need so that I minimize my waste. And sometimes when you put a die through your die cutting machine, it can help run through more smoothly and cut more evenly if you do it at an angle. This die just barely fits through my cuddle bug, so I wasn't able to angle it too much, but it is curvy, so it does go through the die cutting machine really easily. And so now I'm going to cut the little strip, and again, this is just scrap from other cuts that I've made, and I'm just going to line it up with the portion of the die where it's going to get applied to the base page. So this is the main die in this die set, and this will cut your cover, your base pages, and you can see that it has both a full page, a hinge, and the half page. But you don't necessarily have to cut the full die every time you pass it through your die cutting machine. You can just cut whatever portion of it you want to use. So often I just use my paper trimmer to trim down smaller pieces of paper like what you're seeing here, where I'm just going to use the half page panel portion of the die, and I just line it up against the edge of the die that is where the half page ends, and that way I get a nice even cut and just of the portion that I'm going to use. Today I am working on my self-healing cutting mat because I did anticipate having to do a lot of trimming to fit. So you'll see that a lot of the pieces, because I am doing a lot of partial die cutting, it's not going to be a perfect fit. So I'll just trim up the edges a little bit where I need to, and that'll ensure that I get a nice fit. So I'm placing magnet closures, and when you place your magnets, you want to be sure that you're giving yourself enough room around the magnet so that your designer paper or your decorative paper can adhere over it and cover it. And I did have to move it a smidge because the other thing that I did not account for was the fact that I'm using a decorative brad. The brad isn't there to secure anything or hold anything. It's purely decorative, just to look like it's a little doorknob on that wood paneling. And so I wanted to make sure that there was enough room for the ends of the brad to fold over on the underside. So now with this brad, it's just a white brad, and that's generally how I like to buy my brads. I just buy plain white brads and then I color it with my alcohol markers. And I found that with, at least with the brown one, you can, if you just keep coloring over the marker, even where you've already colored, the color builds up a little bit and it gets a little bit darker. So it starts to look a little bit like wood grain. Now to trim, I'm lining the page up with my grid on my cutting mat and using a steel ruler to kind of trim off the edges so that they don't overlap where the gatefold is. And here I'm using a combination of double-sided adhesive. I'm just using my generic brand, not my score tape, and some liquid adhesive. The liquid adhesive is really going to make for a very permanent adhesion and strengthen the page as well, because some of the adhesive will soak into the page and kind of make it stiffer and sturdier, which is a good thing. So I'm just gonna apply all these panels. I did put score tape over the magnets and the brad just to secure those in place. And so now we have our 3 pages all complete. Now I'm gonna attach the front and the back of each page signature. So essentially I'm gonna create pocket pages and for 2 of the pages. So I'm just gonna put adhesive on 3 sides, and the pocket will be on the top. But I did leave the hinge open, so that's going to attach to the hidden hinge system that I'll be building next. So you can see I'm only putting adhesive and glue kind of on that main panel, but the curved section doesn't have any adhesive yet. Now for the little star album, within this album, I used quite a few magnets to hold it in place. 4 10mm magnets. might have been overkill, but I just wanted to make sure that it was gonna really stick and hold. So this page signature actually won't be a pocket page because the magnets are in there, and it that's gonna get in the way of anything sliding in and out. And I definitely wanted it to have as much strength and security as possible, so I wanted adhesive throughout that whole panel because it does have to hold the mini album. And I do like to make my own hinges, so I'm measuring the thickness of the mini album so I can make sure that the gusset for that page is going to be wide enough. So I love making my own hinges because you can really customize it to what style album you need. So I leave myself 1.5 inches of the flap to attach to the cover, and then 1/2 inch for the hinges, and I just put an H for each hinge piece. And then in this case, my gussets are different. So for the regular pages, I think it's just 1/4 inch, but for the page that's going to hold the star album, it's actually 1/2 inch. And I find that it's helpful to mark, what's a hinge and what's not, because then I know where to place my score tape. So on one side of the hinge, I put score tape on both hinge tabs because that's what will attach to the page. And on the underside, I just put score tape on one of the hinge tabs because that's all I need to adhere the hinge to itself so that it can stick up. Then once everything is scored and folded down, now I have the actual width of my spine. So I'm gonna cut using some 110-pound heavyweight cardstock. So if you're using maybe lightweight chipboard is probably what you're used to for the extra kind of sturdiness and stability. I wasn't sure whether this die would cut through the chipboard that I have, and I don't have white or ivory chipboard, so I decided to just go with 110-pound heavyweight cardstock. And again, I did a partial die cut so that I only cut the main page, and that way I can cut just a straight edge as long as I needed to cover the spine. And I did that for the front cover and the back cover. And I also cut from 110-pound heavyweight cardstock the front main page. That will be my front cover, just the extra stability. Again, this might be chipboard. And I'm using a big roll of score tape. That's a 5-inch roll, and it may seem excessive, but it's really good to be a little bit more generous with your score tape in the construction of your cover and spine, because you definitely don't want any lifting or bubbling when you put these pieces together, because they are sort of the foundation on which the rest of your album is built. So I like to be generous with my score tape here. And actually I find that the 5-inch roll, in terms of, per square foot, the unit cost is actually cheaper than buying, those thinner rolls. The thin rolls are really convenient for hinges and whatnot. So I still tend to use my 3/8 and 1/4 inch a lot, but for the cover and spine construction, I use that 5-inch roll. So here I'm attaching my front and back covers to each other. And you can see it's not a super thick album, but I did leave, even though I'm not using chipboard, I did leave some space between my heavyweight cardstock piece that is the spine, which is what I'm working on now, and the two cover pieces. So that way the covers can fold, open and close with ease and not be obstructed by the heavyweight chipboard, which isn't super thick, but I still wanted to make sure that it moved with ease. So I did give it about, I think, 1/8 of an inch between. And usually if you're using any sort of chipboard, you want to give yourself enough space. The general rule of thumb is 2 widths of your chipboard is how much space you need to leave between the spine and the covers. And here I'm mitering the edges of my spine piece, which I do anyways in my normal album construction, but in this case it's critical because of the curved edges on the pages and the cover. So you can't leave it straight because it will definitely get seen. So I'm just tracing the curve on the cover pieces just to make sure that I can, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's better to notch that out so that that hinge piece doesn't get seen. And again, I'm generous with my score tape here, so that hinge is entirely backed by score tape. And I'm gonna place it on the hinge first, and then it becomes easier to get the 2 flaps down. You just want to make sure that the score lines are straight and that they bend and fold with each other nicely. And so I just keep scoring that and bending it, training that paper to move the way that I expect it to. And I've cut from the same ivory cardstock that full cover panel, and as well I'm putting a pocket on my front cover. And so here's the matted layer for that half page, and I also use the matted layer for the main page. I didn't cut the full main page because the pocket is going to cover the bottom portion, so no need to waste paper there. I just wanted to make sure that it does go far enough down so that you can't see it, but I didn't need it to go fully down to the spine. And this is a pocket, so it's just going to have adhesive on the 3 edges, leaving that side edge, top edge open. And I'm going to do the same with the back cover as well. So so each cover piece has decorative paper on the front, a base of ivory, and 110-pound heavyweight cardstock, and on the inside cover another base of ivory cardstock, and then another layer of decorative pattern paper. So at the end of the day, it does become fairly substantial, and it feels like a very nice sturdy album, even though I'm not using chipboard. One of the nice dies that gets included with this set is these verso dies that cut out that really nice sort of lattice pattern that you see there. There's actually a second verso die that will cut out that solid portion. I chose not to use it because I wanted some of the pattern paper to show through to balance out the other half of the page. But I love that you get that option so you can kind of mix it up and use things in a variety of ways. And these are just decorative pieces, so I didn't think that my score tape would be necessary for them, so I'm just using my regular double-sided adhesive there. Now to attach the pages to the hinges, I just want to make sure that I've got it all in the right order. And what I like to do is I like to lay the page down flat to make sure that it will fold down flat. And once I get one half of the page attached, then it's a lot easier to get the other. So I hold it over the hinge and then just use my Cricut weeding tool to kind of lift up that paper liner and pull that out. So once you get that, you can really, I find this way, kind of line up the page that you're working on to previous pages that you've already attached, and you can also make sure that everything kind of lines up nicely. And so here are just some tags that I created with some of the scraps of pattern paper that I have. This tag came from a Sizzix die set, and it did have a die for cutting the matting layer as well. So that's what I used on the decorative paper. And you can see those tags are perfect for a 2x3 photo that I create photo mats with photo corners, and they just have a very like really small thin border around them. But this way the album recipient can just slip their photos in, and I put double-sided adhesive on the back of the photo mat so that they can just sort of peel and stick it into their album wherever they choose. And this way it's really easy for them. They don't have to have any supplies or go out and buy any supplies, and they can very quickly kind of fill their album. Because a lot of the people I give gifts to, they're not super crafty people, and so they don't necessarily have a lot of these special things, just lying around. I also had the idea to create these little magnet clips. I thought it would be a super cute way of using these banners. It's from from two different bunting die sets from Tonic Studios, and it's their smaller bunting die. Super cute. And the die set does come with both the matted layer for these dies and a lot of verso dies to cut patterns into the matted layer. I just chose not to do that with these because I was using the pattern paper. So I just put my little magnets. These are my 6mm diameter magnets. And I didn't even bother to put decorative paper on the inside since it's going to be closed most of the time. But they're really cute. I figured they're a fun way to kind of clip things into your book without kind of using paper clips that might sort of dent and leave impressions in your pattern paper or your book pages. And so I used it to clip photo mats onto the pocket pages, and I showed some examples of how these could be used to clip photo mats onto the page itself if you didn't want to adhere the photo mat directly onto the page. So it's just like an example of some of the goodies that I'm going to be including in this album. So I'll tuck some of those tags into the pocket pages, and I'll put some of them into the pockets themselves. And I only made a few photo mats just to show you, but I'll be kind of going through the album and seeing how many photo mats can fit and of what sizes, because some of those pages can actually fit a 3x4 photo, not just a 2x3. So whatever photos configurations I can dream up, I'll try to include photo mats to allow for that layout, and that way my friend who gets this will have hopefully more than enough photo mats to put into her album. And of course the mini album can hold a lot of photo mats as well. So speaking of, this is just a template little star album that I made for myself when I was learning how to do this. And essentially, I have most of it already built, but basically, you cut your main page, and then for each point in the star, that's how many pages you'll need. So I'm making a 6-pointed star, so I already have 4 of these pages created, and I'll do the last 2 here with you. And my pattern paper I've cut to be 1 inch less wide than the base page. It's the same height though, because this is such a small album that I figure I didn't want the border, but you can certainly have a nice, white or ivory border around all the edges if you'd like. I just wanted to have more of the pattern paper show. So now by cutting it 1 inch less wide, that's what gives you that little bit of a gap that creates a little bit of dimension and interest in your star. A lot of star albums have even 3 layers, but again, with such a small um, album, I didn't want to go down a size because then that's going to limit the size of the photo that can go onto these pages. And I didn't want the photo to take up the entire page because still want some of that pattern paper to come through. So once you have all of your pages made, you just adhere one panel onto the next. And I adhere the whole panel. I know there are some tutorials out there that just show putting adhesive along one edge, but I actually adhere the full panel because I kind of like that look better. On the front and back covers, that's where you want to put your magnets if you choose to use magnets. I think the magnets really help in a lot of different ways, and I used 4, which might be overkill. I would only use typically 1 for an album this size, possibly 2 for a larger one, but I like having the magnet because it really keeps the front and the back closed when you have it in the star formation, and so it looks nice and complete. It doesn't sort of gap open. And I did attach ribbon to the front and back, which you would normally use because all the pages tends to kind of like you're seeing kind of fan out, and so it doesn't necessarily always want to close flat. And so when you have it closed in the book form, having the ribbon really helps keep it closed tightly. But in this case, I used so many magnets that I didn't even need the ribbon for that. So it still actually comes in handy because when this is opened and in its star formation, it's really hard to tell where the front and back cover is so that you can fold it back down. All those magnets really makes for a very tight kind of adhesion between the front and the back cover. So in the closed form, the magnets still attract, and so it keeps the album closed really nicely without even needing the ribbon. But like I said, the ribbon is still useful, just in a different way. It's actually useful in identifying the front and back so that when you go to close the album, you can pull the ribbon apart and separate the front and back covers. So I'm just using some double-sided adhesive, and if this was a larger album, I would probably use score tape here, but I'm just using my regular double-sided adhesive, which actually I think I got lucky, and even though it's a generic brand, it seems really strong. I've had mistakes where I've tried to pull the paper back up and it was just as hard to pull it up as when I use score tape. So I think I got lucky with this one. Definitely be buying it again. And I just got it on Amazon. But whatever adhesive you use, definitely giving it a very firm, even scoring, burnishing will help it. And that's the Star album. Pretty quick and simple. So yeah, this is a really simple, 2-in-1 album that comes together really quickly because the die does all of the work. Star albums are fairly simple to put together as well. So, you can kind of add some ephemera and embellishments, but here's the finished album. So it does measure about 5¼ by 5¼ and in my case it was about 1.5 inches spine. And like I said, this die set really does all the work for you, and there's so many more decorative elements to it that I haven't even really explored because I just wanted to have a play and put one together to see how it comes together. And I think it all came together really quickly. I finished this in probably, definitely within a day. I don't know how many hours because I was working on it on and off. but if you need a quick gift idea, this is really perfect. And having the album within an album is a really fun way to give your album recipient a lot of photo placement opportunities, because that little star album can actually fit 12 photos. So for such a small size, it packs a lot. And these fun little tags also are great places for photos. The page itself can hold a 3x4. You can't fit a 4x6 photo without trimming, but a 3x4 works really well, and lots of places for 2x3s as well. So if you know somebody who has those Instax cameras or Polaroid cameras, has become a really common size now. So lots of fun ways to use this die set, and I think really fun. I'll definitely be making more albums using this die set. Thanks for joining me, and I hope that this video helps inspire you, and as I make more mini albums, I'll be sure to share them with you. Have a fantastic day.